Okay, so back about a month ago, we did a video on this channel talking about the album art for our chiptune EP, where I came up with an idea that I thought was pretty good, and I scouted some artists that I thought might be able to make that idea a reality. Go back and watch that whole video if you want kind of like the recap of why that all worked. But basically, I wanted a spaceship, a big boss battle type spaceship from like a Galaga style game going up against a small hero ship, and I wanted that boss ship to look like my logo. One of the artists I found in that video is called Space Goose. Space Goose has a lot of experience turning everyday objects into spaceships, so they seemed very particularly set up to succeed at this sort of idea. But I will admit, I was intimidated to hire an artist. I was scared to ask somebody to start making something that I'm going to send them money for, because what if it doesn't work out? What if I don't like what they made? At the end of the day, this will always be a leap of faith, but I do think there's kind of two things you can do to give yourself the best chance of success. The first is find an artist you're genuinely excited about. If you imagine them making a piece of art for you, that idea really excites you. As an extreme example, I have a friend who has like full sleeve tattoos, and they go to this one artist and they'll just walk in, they'll tell the artist, here's kind of my general idea, and then they don't get to see it until the tattoo's already on their body. And while that would stress me out, the way my friend explains it is that they just adore everything that this artist makes, and the idea of getting to have a piece of their art live on their body is exciting to them. And I don't say that at all to say go get tattoos without seeing the art prior to it being on your skin, but I do say that to say when you find an artist you like enough, it almost doesn't matter what they make. You're gonna still like it because you like everything else they've made before. So find an artist you're genuinely excited about. Don't just go for the first one that you come across. The second piece of advice is have a really good description of what it is you want. I ended up reaching out to Space Goose for making the album art of this EP, and I'm gonna walk you through the conversation we had and kind of show you the process of going from an idea to having a completed piece of album art here. And that starts here with having a good description of what it is that I'm looking for. I sent them a DM that like very briefly explained the idea, and then they said, hey, send me an email. So we started the conversation over here. And one of the things I sent them was the video I linked at the beginning of this. And I think this is a great idea. If you don't have to be comfortable on camera, you don't have to put your face on the video, but having a little video where you're just like talking about the project is a really easy way to show an artist what you want, especially if you have like paint up in front of you, or just like a series of, a bunch of pictures. They may have a whole bunch of tabs open on Google of like, here's different ideas and different pictures that can like relate to what I'm talking about. Having stuff like that together is really good. And then after they said, yep, this will be great. And I think maybe the most important thing after we got a few emails in here, this image I drew, I think really helps give a basic fundamental like roadmap of where we're going. If I were to just describe to you, I want a space battle between a big hero ship and a small ship, this sort of arrangement is very different than like than like a boss ship being where I am and a enemy ship being where you are, right? And it kind of coming at you this way. Like you could have like different perspectives, or having like the boss ship at the bottom versus the hero ship on the top, right? It's really important, I think, to give an artist a real basic rudimentary like blocking map of like, here's kind of where the big shapes are. And you don't have to be this good at drawing, right? If you draw stick figures, like it doesn't matter, just like a very basic like napkin drawing, I think will really help align the artist's brain with your brain, because that's really what you're trying to do in this process. You're trying to get an idea that's in your head into the artist's brain, because the artist has hands that can draw things, and your brain has an idea that came up with something. If you can just get that idea into the artist's brain, then their hands can do the thing you picture, right? So I gave them that image. I also sent them the music so they could listen to it and get an idea, but a little bit more detail, right? I said I want a blue, purple wash and stars in the background so that the ship kind of pops against it. It might be nice if the stars had sort of a motion blur to create an illusion of the ship's moving through space. Now, my process here is a little bit different maybe than other people's processes will be, because I'm working directly with an artist who doesn't make album art. This is an artist who makes normal art, and I'm going to try and turn it into album art because I think that's a cool blend. But it's really important when working with an artist who doesn't usually make album art to point out things that maybe they wouldn't consider normally, okay, that are important to album art specifically. I say another thing to consider is that the art will mostly be viewed scaled down in music apps. Think about viewing album art on your phone, on Spotify. It's a small, tiny piece of art, and if there's too much detail when it scales down, it's just gonna get lost and look muddy, right? So as like I say, only large details will really kind of carry over in those environments. If when scaled down, it just sort of looks like the logo, my logo on a space background, that's okay. The only concern I would really have to be is if it somehow like wasn't recognizable when it scaled down and just kind of looked like a big old blur blur, right? I also talk about the art needs to be 1 by 1. It needs to be at least 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. These are the sorts of measurements you will get from websites where you upload art. This is a general good roadmap to follow, though, for album art. At least 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, preferably like 3,000 by 3,000. There's usually no kind of like upper limit to how high of a res it can be. It just needs to be 1:1 and then like under the file size for whatever place you're uploading to. But yeah, so once I kind of gave them the basic idea, we talked a little bit about timeline. I'm not really under a crunch at all. They started getting to work on it, and look at this. This is so cool to me. This is the first sketches they sent over, some ideas, and I got so excited when I got these. They have a few kind of different general shapes, but most of them all kind of similar. A few ideas for what the little hero ship at the bottom could look like, and this was kind of the big one they settled on. One of the things I didn't really know what they were going to do was like, how do you make this ship how do we make my logo look like a boss ship that's intimidating in some way? And they had this wonderful idea of having the negative space in the logo kind of be like a series of batteries that are like charging up a laser that this ship's about to shoot. I was also in this space where I didn't want the album art to have the fight be ongoing, but I didn't want it to seem like the two ships were just sitting there. So how do I kind of like straddle those two? And this idea of like it charging up an attack is such a good like video game specific style of composition, an idea of like the moment in the fight right before the fight starts. Love this. I got so excited. Now, when you're working with artists, feedback and iteration is a big part of it, right? I've explained the idea to them as well as I possibly can, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to like everything's going to translate directly and they're just going to like the first time out of the gate make exactly what I want. They got really close here though. There was not really that much iteration I had to do. They also told me like, hey, don't worry about the proportions. I'll make sure it's exactly your logo once I like do the first real line art, which made me feel good because I do want this to like very visually, when scaled down, look like my logo. And so coming out of that, I drew some circles on it and talked about some things. I asked them like, hey, you know, like what are these? What are your kind of ideas with these things on the side? At first I was like, I don't know if I like those because it kind of distracts from the shape. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, maybe it actually kind of works. It's kind of cool. And then I was confused about this. It looked like he was using orange as like a way to indicate like bevels on the front of the ship, and I was confused why there was a bevel only in part of the middle triangle. So I just asked them what that was about. They said the red cutout is supposed to be like a glowing red windows of the bridge viewed from the top down. So it's like an evil robot eye. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. The rest was like, you know, greeble antenna stuff on the side. And I was like, you know what, honestly, leave that stuff in. I kind of want to see how that goes. Super on board for the evil robot eye. Let's do it. So then they sent me this, and I got so excited again. Suddenly this, like the difference in color makes this really pop out, makes it all make sense here. You've got the laser starting to charge up, you got the different panels. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. I'm really starting to get excited about where this album art is going. This artist is doing a great job. And this kind of brings me to my next note on the process of working with an artist is be willing to compartmentalize your feedback to the stage of the work they're on at that moment, right? He wasn't doing coloring at this point, so while I thought all these colors were kind of muted, and I didn't like that this isn't the color palette I wanted to go with, but I had communicated color beforehand that I wanted more vibrant colors, and right now he's just doing line art. He's just kind of like showing the general like rigid composition. These lines are actually going to stay in place, and so the only feedback I give is on things that have anything to do with the line art. I'm asking we kind of like mathematically center. Right now the ship's kind of like, it's like on the actual center. I want it to like look visually like it's in the center, which is a thing you can Google, visual centering versus like actual centering. And so I just asked them to move that a little bit, and then they said, cool, great, let's show you the rest of it. And this is the first like real close to complete version they sent, and man, I love this so much. It's so cool. The little edges of the ship, I'm so glad I asked them to leave these details in. One thing we talked about, I think in the first email I sent, was like, I don't know what we're going to do about the negative space in my logo, because as you can see on my logo, this is all empty on my logo. So I was like, how are you going to make three different distinct shapes feel like one ship? And using this darker kind of exposed interior materials to connect them all, that was such a good ingenious idea. And this is why you go work with an artist who specifically specializes in the thing you want done. I wanted an everyday object, or like a logo, turned into a spaceship. I wouldn't have thought to fill it in with black ship interior, but Space Goose, who makes everyday objects into ships on a regular basis, has definitely thought about this process before and has come up with good solutions. So it really kind of pops here. It looks so cool. I love the glow, the red glow on the ship of like the laser charging up. It adds so much depth to it. The background's cool. The pixel stars are awesome. Like such a cool way to like have a little bit of a chiptune vibe to it, while having the rest of it not be like 8-bit. They also sent me a black and white version, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. I kind of want to like put it on a poster or something like that. I'm definitely gonna get a poster made of this art. And then they gave me one of it like in this like visually centered versus like mathematically centered, and it confirmed I did actually like it shifted a little bit to the left there. So I loved this. I thought it was great. I sent over another round of feedback, and at this point I can start to critique the vibe of the whole piece. Before this, it was definitely kind of in a this is idea, this is rough sketches. Now, you know, this last email they said here it's almost done, right? They're looking at this and they're saying I'm feeling this is pretty close. This is the point for me to give feedback on the feel of the piece. And so I gave a few notes here. The first one I noticed was that as much as I love the evilness of the ship here, when you kind of scroll down, there's no way for me to zoom out here. I can zoom in, but I can't zoom out. When you scroll down, the ship does start to kind of blend into the background a little bit. If you kind of like blur your eyes and look at it, it's not like really, it doesn't pop a lot. I want it when viewed in a little tiny square to be like really obviously my logo. So while it's got a good evil vibe to it, I kind of wanted the outsides to be a little bit brighter. And additionally, I also wanted it to just have a little bit more motion. While this is great, they do look like they're kind of sitting still. And if we could maximize the motion a little bit, that would be great. And I also sketched up a version of the completed album art that I was going to do, of like putting in text and stuff. This was kind of the first moment I felt like, wow, I really feel like this is starting to come together. And at this point, I had kind of pulled this into Photoshop and kind of just turned up the brightness on this to kind of like give an idea of like, this is more the contrast I want. I want this to be a little bit more white, and then have this all pop together like this. At this point, they sent me back another iteration, this time with a bit more motion in it, and they kind of added these lines on top, and they'd also made this a bit brighter here, listening to the feedback I had given. At this point, though, I did feel like these lines to me looked a little bit more like film grain than they did like speed lines. I didn't feel like the ships were moving. I just felt like there was a film grain over the top of it. They also, though, sent me over this awesome looping animation, at which point the speed lines totally work, right? Once they're in motion, this actually really vibes. You got the glowing laser, the moving little afterburner there of the ship. This is so cool. And they're like, hey, you can use this if you want. I'm probably going to use this on Spotify for like the little animation that plays when you like pull up a song full screen, and it kind of has a little video in the background. Probably use that for this. But out of that, I said like, yeah, okay, for the animation, it's so sick. This is so cool. The speed lines, I think, work great in the animation. I don't think that they work in the still image, though. They look a little bit more like film grain, so maybe let's just take those out. Then I asked for a few other little details. There was a few other kind of like just clean up things I wanted to make sure got taken care of before I moved on from this. And I also asked them if they were cool with me talking about them in the video, so we did. They did approve us talking about this. And that gave us, ultimately, this piece of art from them, cleaned up, looking good. They also sent over a new animation variation, which I might try to add some speed lines on top of myself. I did like those. At this point, though, while it wasn't done, and while I knew I had the intention of building the album art myself, kind of like taking it from a piece of art into album art, I was going to do that part. I'd always planned from the beginning of doing that part myself. At this point, I felt like I had got my money's worth from Space Goose. This is what I'd asked. I'd asked, can you make a ship? My logo into a ship. That's the part I can't do. That's the part you can do. And they had absolutely done that, and they were kind enough to send me the Photoshop file that they were using to get this done. Now, if you're watching this and being like, well, wait, so they didn't finish the album art. For me, this is where my relationship with Space Goose stopped. But if I had hired them to make album art, not just to make a piece of art, you continue to go through this process until they have all the extra details added, like the name and like stuff like this. If you work with an actual album art artist, they will be able to put all this stuff in. And honestly, if I had asked Space Goose to do this, there's a chance that they would have been able to. They probably just charged me a little bit more because that is a slightly larger piece of art. And at this point, with giving me the Photoshop file, I was really excited because that meant I was able to do this. This is the debut of the album art for Boss Fight. I might continue to tweak it a little bit. There's a few changes I want to make, but this is what I spent today working on, was finishing this and getting this to a more complete phase. I did spend a day previously working on that first mock-up you saw, but I really wanted to put all this into one video, so I didn't show you guys this process at that point. The main things I added here was these little blurs behind the ships to imply the ship moving. And I like having them go like this, feels very Galaga, and also explains why the ship is directly under the laser right now, that they're just happening to be passing each other. He's not just sitting there about to tank a full laser blast, right? The story of it, I want them visually to be lined up so that when we scroll out, like it like kind of all makes sense, but I didn't want lore-wise, this ship to just be a dummy sitting in the way of the laser, right? But we added the boss fight text up here, kind of a Monster Cat-esque little label down here. Usually on album art, you've got some piece of information indicating like the label or distributor you're using, some sort of like, you know, like the explicit tag that gets put on a lot of stuff that like it's like a little bit of like corporate capitalism warning label type vibes that like helps complete it as album art. So that's kind of what this is functioning as. I've thought about doing it like that, maybe doing it like this. I'm not quite sure which one I like better. I'm kind of leaning towards the purple right now. But yeah, honestly, love this. I think it's so cool, and I'm really excited about putting this out. Now, the only thing that's left for the process of the chiptune EP is to upload it through a distributor. I've now got all the masters and the album art done. Time to put out some music. How about it? Yeah, this was a great process. Work with local artists. Working with Space Goose was so much fun. It was so cool seeing this all come together. I really feel like my money went to like really good use. It's so cool to like buy a piece of art. Like this piece of art is mine. We were like, Space Goose made this for me, and I get to like now print it on a poster and upload it to Spotify and stuff like that. Like, it's so cool. I love having this, and it's just such a beautiful process getting to like collaborate with artists like this. I'm so glad I did this instead of just making it myself from the ground up. And again, I want to stress, if you're trying to make your own album art, but you don't have the photoshopping skills that I've got, you can absolutely find people like Space Goose who all specialize specifically in making album art. And even honestly, if I had asked Space Goose to make it, they probably would have. So highly encourage you, please go work with people. Work with Space Goose if this is the sort of art that you would enjoy having for yourself. Could not recommend working with them enough. They were very prompt, they were very polite, they were very professional, and got the art done well before we were planning on it. They were only thinking that they would be able to get it done kind of like mid-June, or like started to get work on mid-June, and they started way before that. So really appreciate their promptness there. And we'll get to have the EP out very soon, folks. That's all I got for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.